Chosen one, this is for your eyes only. Not because you are better than anyone else, but because not every eye deserves access to what is still being formed in you. Some messages lose their power when they are exposed to the wrong ears. Some instructions must be received in silence before they can be lived in public. Some words are not meant to be carried into a crowd, argued over, explained, defended, or handed to people who were never assigned to understand the private place where your life is changing. So take a real breath, not a perfect breath, not a dramatic breath, just one honest breath, the kind that reminds your spirit that you are still here, still being held, still being guided, even if the last season made you feel like you were walking through fog with no one beside you. This did not reach you randomly. Something higher knows how to place a private message in front of the exact person who has been asking silent questions no one else could hear. You may have smiled around people while feeling heavy inside. You may have kept showing up while something in you was quietly asking, "How much longer can I keep pretending this still fits me?" You may have felt a strange pull to become quieter, more careful, more hidden. Not because you hate anyone, but because your spirit has been sensing that too many people had access to the unfinished version of you. And that is where this begins. This message is not here to feed fear. It is not here to make you suspicious of everyone around you. It is not here to tell you to become cold, distant, bitter, or unreachable. It is here to help you understand the sacred difference between hiding from life and being hidden for protection. There is a difference. Hiding from life comes from fear. Being hidden for protection comes from wisdom. Hiding from life makes you smaller. Being hidden for protection makes you stronger. Hiding from life says, "I am not worthy to be seen." Being hidden for protection says, "What is growing in me is too important to be exposed too early." And chosen one, that is the part you need to hear before anything else. You are not being erased. You are not being forgotten. You are not being left behind while everyone else moves forward. You are being covered. You are being prepared. You are being pulled out of rooms where your energy was being consumed, but not restored. And before this message is finished, you are going to understand 3 things that may change the way you move from this day forward. You are going to understand why certain people can no longer have the same access to you. You are going to understand why your sudden need for silence is not weakness, but discernment. And you are going to understand what must stay private until it becomes strong enough to stand without being damaged by the wrong voice. So stay with this until the end. Not because you need more information, but because your spirit may need the confirmation your mind has been delaying. You have been feeling it already. The old places do not feel the same anymore. The old conversations do not feed you the way they used to. The old version of being available to everyone is starting to feel less like love and more like slow exhaustion. You may not have had the words for it, but your body has been speaking. Your energy has been speaking. Your peace has been speaking. Your dreams, your emotions, your discomfort, your silence, all of it has been trying to tell you that something inside you is shifting into a new level of sensitivity. There are people you used to answer immediately, but now something in you hesitates. There are rooms you used to enter easily, but now your spirit feels heavy before you even arrive. There are conversations you used to tolerate, but now they leave you tired in a way sleep does not fix. There are things you used to explain over and over, hoping someone would finally understand. But now, the thought of explaining feels like handing away a piece of your power. That is not random. That is not you becoming rude. That is not you losing your heart. That is your inner world learning the cost of access. For a long time, you gave people the benefit of the doubt until there was almost nothing left of you. You kept the peace by abandoning your own. You softened the truth so others would not feel uncomfortable. You made yourself easy to reach, easy to question, easy to interrupt, easy to drain. And because you are a giver, you may have called it love. But there is a kind of giving that is holy, and there is a kind of giving that becomes self-erasure. There is a kind of kindness that heals, and there is a kind of kindness that trains people to ignore your limits. There is a kind of openness that builds connection, and there is a kind of openness that exposes sacred things to careless hands. This is why the private season has begun. Not because you failed, not because you are being punished, not because the divine has turned away from you, but because something in you is too valuable to keep being passed around in places that do not know how to honor it. Think of a sealed letter. A sealed letter is not empty because it is closed. It is not useless because it has not been opened by everyone in the room. Its value is protected by the seal. Its message is preserved because access is limited. The wrong person can hold it and see nothing but paper. But the right person knows there is weight inside it. Chosen one, you are carrying a sealed letter season. There are instructions inside you that cannot be explained to everyone yet. There are dreams inside you that do not need early opinions. There are changes happening in your spirit that do not need to be announced before they are understood. There is healing taking place in you that cannot survive if you keep reopening the wound for people who only know how to inspect it, not cover it. And maybe this is why you have felt so misunderstood lately. You are trying to describe something that is still being formed. You are trying to explain a shift that has not fully taken shape. You are trying to make people respect a boundary before you have fully accepted that the boundary is necessary. So let this be the first private instruction. Stop asking people to approve what they were never meant to carry. Not everyone who loves the old you will understand the becoming of the new you. Not everyone who benefited from your availability will celebrate your boundaries. Not everyone who praised your strength will know what to do when you stop bleeding, just to prove you are loyal. And this does not make them evil. That is important. This message is not giving you permission to hate people. It is giving you permission to discern access. Some people can love you and still not be safe for your next level. Some people can know your past and still not be qualified to speak into your future. Some people can be familiar and still not be aligned. Some people can mean well and still mishandle what is sacred. This is why your spirit has been pulling back. This is why silence has started to feel like medicine. This is why the noise that used to entertain you now feels like static. This is why you can be surrounded by people and still feel like you are standing alone at the edge of something new. You are not lonely in the way you think you are. You are being separated from the voices that trained you to doubt your own inner knowing. You are being separated from the environments where your light was useful, but your growth was inconvenient. You are being separated from the version of yourself that needed constant approval before taking one honest step forward. This is not abandonment. This is covering. This is not rejection. This is refinement. This is not the end of your connection with people. This is the beginning of your connection with truth. And the truth is, your next season will require a level of privacy that the old you would have mistaken for loneliness. The old you needed to be understood by everyone. The new you needs to be faithful to what is being formed within you. The old you explained every move because you were afraid silence would make people leave. The new you understands that whoever requires constant access to stay connected was never connected to the deepest part of you. The old you thought love meant being available at all times. The new you is learning that love without wisdom becomes exhaustion. That is why this message feels private. It is not just because of who is outside of you. It is because of what is awakening inside of you. There is a part of you that has been too exposed, too available, too easy to reach, too willing to answer questions from people who were not asking because they cared, but because they wanted to keep track of your movement. And even when people did care, you still gave them more access than your spirit could afford. You gave updates when you needed silence. You gave explanations when you needed rest. You gave emotional access when you needed protection. You gave people a seat in your inner room when they had never shown the maturity to sit there with reverence. And now something in you is saying, no more. Not with anger, not with pride, not with revenge, with peace. A quiet no, a sacred no, a no that does not need to become a speech. A no that sounds like finally choosing not to betray yourself. This is the first sign that the private season is real. You are losing the desire to prove what you know is true. You are losing the urge to convince people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You are losing the old panic that made you chase closure from people who kept reopening confusion. And at first, that can feel frightening, because when you stop performing the old version of yourself, some people will not know how to respond. They may call you different. They may call you distant. They may act like your healing is an attack on them. They may ask why you changed, when the truth is, you did not change into someone cruel. You changed into someone who can no longer survive without peace. Let them notice. Let them wonder. Let them meet the boundary before they get another explanation. Because one of the most sacred things you can do in this season is allow your life to become quieter without apologizing for the quiet. There is a reason the seed grows under the soil before it ever breaks the surface. If the seed tried to prove itself too early, it would never become the tree. If it demanded applause while still underground, it would misunderstand the purpose of darkness. If it thought being unseen meant being unloved, it would panic in the very place designed to protect its becoming. Chosen one, you are in the soil stage of something sacred. The darkness is not proof that nothing is happening. The silence is not proof that you have been forgotten. The hiddenness is not proof that you are behind. There are roots forming where no one can clap for you. There is strength developing where no one can measure it. There is a future being built in the quiet place. And the reason it must be quiet is because roots do not grow well under constant interference. So when the old urge rises in you to announce, explain, defend, or reveal too much, I want you to imagine a sealed room within your spirit. In that room, there is a table, and on that table, there are three things: your healing, your next instruction, your deepest dream. Do not hand them to the crowd. Do not open the door just because someone is curious. Do not mistake pressure for permission. In your mind, let the door stay closed. Let the light inside the room stay warm. Let the sacred things on the table remain covered until they are strong enough to be carried into the open. And if your heart needs a simple sentence to hold on to, let it be this: I can be loving without being exposed. That is the sentence for this season. I can be loving without being exposed. You can care about people and still not tell them everything. You can forgive people and still not reopen access. You can be kind and still be private. You can be chosen and still be hidden. You can be preparing for something greater and still look quiet from the outside. And this is where the first part of the message closes, but the deeper truth begins to open. Because the next question is not only who should no longer have access to you. The deeper question is, why do you keep giving access away when your spirit already knows it is time to protect what is sacred? That is where the real turning point begins. Because sometimes the danger is not only the wrong people watching you too soon. Sometimes the danger is the wounded part of you that keeps inviting them back in, hoping that this time they will finally understand what the divine has already told you to protect. And that is the part most people do not want to face. It is easier to say the wrong people keep reaching for you than to admit that a wounded part of you keeps opening the door. It is easier to blame the noise around you than to ask why you keep returning to the noise after your spirit has already warned you. It is easier to say they do not understand me than to ask why you are still begging for understanding from people who have shown you, again and again, that they do not know how to hold what is sacred. Chosen one, this is not to shame you. This is to free you. Because the private message was never only about who is watching you. It was also about who you become when you feel watched. It was about the version of you that starts explaining before anyone asks. The version of you that overtalks when you feel misunderstood. The version of you that gives people more details than they earned, because some part of you still believes that if they finally understand your heart, they will finally treat you gently. But you already know the truth. Some people do not need more information. They need less access. Some people are not confused about your boundaries. They are uncomfortable with them. Some people do not misunderstand your silence. They are offended because your silence no longer gives them control over your emotional state. And that is where the turning point begins. Because you have been calling it love when sometimes it was fear. You have been calling it loyalty when sometimes it was guilt. You have been calling it patience when sometimes it was self-abandonment. You have been calling it keeping the peace when sometimes it was keeping yourself small so other people would not have to face what your growth awakens in them. This is the private truth beneath the private message. The next door in your life will not open to the version of you that keeps handing out keys to people who never learned how to enter with reverence. You cannot carry sacred instructions with a public heart that still needs everyone to agree. You cannot protect a new season with old access patterns. You cannot become who you are being called to become while still asking permission from people who benefited from your confusion. And this is why you have felt such a strange inner conflict lately. One part of you knows it is time to pull back. Another part of you feels guilty for pulling back. One part of you wants peace. Another part of you is afraid that choosing peace will make people think you have changed in a bad way. One part of you knows the old conversations are draining you. Another part of you says, "But what if they need me?" One part of you knows certain people should not know your plans. Another part of you says, "But what if they feel excluded?" Chosen one, listen carefully. That guilt is not always proof that you are doing something wrong. Sometimes guilt is the echo of an old role you were trained to play. If you spent years being the strong one, peace will feel selfish at first. If you spent years being the listener, privacy will feel rude at first. If you spent years being the fixer, distance will feel cruel at first. If you spent years explaining your heart to people who kept hurting it, silence will feel dangerous at first. But dangerous to what? Dangerous to your healing, or dangerous to the old pattern? Dangerous to your calling, or dangerous to the version of you that survived by staying available? Dangerous to love, or dangerous to the people who confuse access with connection? This is where you must become honest. You are not responsible for keeping everyone comfortable with your becoming. You are not responsible for explaining every shift in your energy. You are not responsible for making your boundaries feel pleasant to the people who preferred you without them. You are allowed to become harder to reach while you are becoming easier to hear from within. You are allowed to become quieter while your spirit becomes clearer. You are allowed to protect your next instruction before the crowd has an opinion about it. You are allowed to outgrow a role, a room, a rhythm, a relationship, a version of yourself that only existed because you were afraid of disappointing people. You are allowed to stop making announcements before you make decisions. You are allowed to stop giving emotional previews to people who only show up to study your weakness. You are allowed to love people without giving them the password to your private room. And if that sentence brings up resistance in you, stay with it. Because the resistance is showing you where the chain still is. Maybe the chain is the fear of being misunderstood. Maybe the chain is the fear of being called selfish. Maybe the chain is the fear that if you stop giving, people will stop choosing you. Maybe the chain is the fear that your value comes from being needed. But chosen one, being needed is not the same as being loved. Being useful is not the same as being honored. Being available is not the same as being connected. Being praised for your strength is not the same as being cared for in your weakness. And this is why the private season can feel so painful. It removes the false rewards that used to keep you attached to draining places. It removes the applause you received for abandoning yourself. It removes the comfort of being included in rooms where your soul was slowly disappearing. At first, privacy feels like loss. Then it begins to feel like oxygen. At first, silence feels like punishment. Then it begins to feel like protection. At first, boundaries feel like conflict. Then they begin to feel like a doorway back to yourself. This is not about building walls around your heart so no one can reach you. That is not healing. That is fear wearing armor. This is about learning the difference between an open heart and an unguarded life. An open heart can still forgive. An open heart can still bless. An open heart can still wish people well. But an unguarded life gives sacred access to anyone with curiosity, history, pressure, or emotional need. And your life can no longer be unguarded. Not in this season. Not with what is forming in you. Not with the level of clarity that is trying to return. So now, I want you to do something inwardly. You do not need to move. You do not need to write anything down. You do not need to perform anything. Just let your mind create a quiet image. Imagine there is a door inside you. Not a heavy door of fear, but a clean, warm, sacred door. Behind it is the part of you that holds your deepest peace, your next instruction, and the dream you have almost talked yourself out of believing. Now imagine 3 kinds of people standing outside that door. The first kind knocks with care. They do not rush you. They do not demand details. They do not punish you for needing silence. When you open a small window, they speak with respect. The second kind knocks with curiosity. They want to know what is happening, but they do not carry the weight of your healing. They ask questions, but their questions do not make you feel safer. They want information more than intimacy. The third kind does not knock. They push. They pressure. They make your boundary feel like betrayal. They act hurt when they lose access, not because they miss your heart, but because they miss the control your openness gave them. Now here is the inner command for this season. Do not open the sacred door because someone is standing outside it. Open it only when peace answers from within. That is the first test. The energy door test is not complicated. It begins with one private question. After I share with this person, do I feel clearer or more confused? Not excited for 5 minutes. Not relieved because I got attention. Not comforted because someone finally listened. Clear, because clarity is different from emotional release. You can feel temporary relief after telling the wrong person everything, then feel heavy again when their reaction enters your spirit. You can feel understood for a moment, then later realize you gave your sacred process to someone who now feels entitled to comment on every part of it. You can feel close to someone because you exposed yourself, but exposure is not the same as intimacy. So ask the question inside, after I share with this person, do I feel clearer or more confused? The second question is this: do they protect my vulnerability, or do they use it as a doorway into my life? Some people listen only so they can hold information. Some people comfort you only long enough to remain close to the parts of you they should no longer touch. Some people make you feel safe in the moment, but later you realize they now know too much about a version of you that is trying to heal. The third question is this: do they honor my growth, or do they keep inviting me back into the role I am trying to leave? This one matters deeply, because some people are comfortable with your pain as long as it keeps you familiar. They know how to love the struggling version of you, the apologizing version of you, the always available version of you, the version that doubts itself and asks for reassurance. But when you begin to stand straighter, speak less, choose peace faster, and move with quiet certainty, something in them resists. They may not say it openly, but you will feel it. They will ask why you are acting different. They will call your peace distance. They will call your boundaries pride. They will call your clarity coldness. They will call your healing a phase. And if you are not careful, you will start defending the very transformation you prayed for. Do not do that. Do not put your becoming on trial. Do not keep submitting evidence to people who already decided they prefer the older version of you. Do not shrink a sacred shift into language that makes the wrong people comfortable. If they cannot honor your growth, they cannot have full access to your process. This is not cruelty. This is stewardship. A person who is building something valuable does not leave the door open during construction. They do not invite everyone to walk across the foundation while it is still setting. They do not hand tools to people who have no respect for the blueprint. They protect the space until the structure can stand. Chosen one, you are under construction in the most sacred way. And the blueprint is not for everyone. Now listen to this next part with care. There are usually only three kinds of people who should have close access in a private season. The first is the witness. The witness is someone who can hear your truth without trying to control it. They do not need to become the main character in your healing. They do not rush to fix you, so they can feel important. They can sit near your process without making noise. The second is the builder. The builder does not only comfort you, they help you become more aligned. They speak with wisdom. They help you see the next honest step. They do not feed your confusion. They help you return to what is true. The third is the mirror. The mirror loves you enough to reflect truth without envy. They are not impressed by your mask, and they are not threatened by your growth. They can tell you when you are hiding in fear, and they can also remind you when your boundary is holy. Everyone else can receive kindness. Everyone else can receive respect. Everyone else can receive basic love, but not everyone receives access. This is where many chosen ones get confused. You think if you do not give someone full access, you are being unloving. But love has many levels. You can love someone from the outer court of your life. You can bless someone without bringing them into the inner room. You can forgive someone without giving them the map to your future. Access must be earned by alignment, not demanded through history. Just because someone knew you in an old season does not mean they are assigned to the new one. Just because someone was there when you were broken does not mean they can handle you becoming whole. Just because someone has your memories does not mean they should have your blueprint. And this is the private wisdom you have been avoiding because it hurts. Some people are connected to who you were, not who you are becoming. Some people love your light as long as it shines on them. Some people celebrate your gift until your gift starts requiring boundaries. Some people want the benefit of your presence without respecting the cost of your growth. And the moment you understand this, you stop begging the wrong people to walk through the right door. You stop giving spiritual explanations to people who only want emotional control. You stop thinking every disagreement requires a defense. You stop mistaking silence for weakness. You stop believing that privacy means you are doing something wrong. This is the point where your power begins to return quietly, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. It returns the first time you do not send the long message. It returns the first time you let someone misunderstand you without rushing to correct the story. It returns the first time you feel the old guilt rise and still choose peace. It returns the first time you keep a sacred instruction between you and the divine until it has roots. It returns the first time you say yes from peace instead of pressure. And this is why you need the quiet yes practice. Before you agree, before you explain, before you return, before you reopen access, let one question rise inside you. Is this coming from peace, or is this coming from fear? Do not answer too quickly. Let the question stand in the center of your spirit like a lamp. If the yes is coming from fear, it will usually feel rushed. It will feel like panic. It will feel like if you do not answer now, prove now, fix now, explain now, someone will punish you with distance, disappointment, or silence. But if the yes is coming from peace, it will have weight without panic. It may still be difficult. It may still require courage. But it will not feel like self-betrayal. That is how you know. Fear says, do it so they do not leave. Peace says, do it because it is aligned. Fear says, explain so they do not misjudge you. Peace says, live clearly and let time reveal what words cannot. Fear says, open the door because they are knocking. Peace says, ask whether they are assigned to enter. Chosen one. This is where your private season becomes powerful. Not when everyone finally understands it. Not when the people who doubted you finally apologize. Not when the crowd validates what you knew in silence. It becomes powerful when you stop leaking energy through unassigned access. It becomes powerful when you stop treating every emotional demand like a divine instruction. It becomes powerful when you stop confusing guilt with guidance. And there is something else. As this privacy increases, you may notice that your inner signal begins to change. The fog may start to lift in small moments. Your intuition may become quieter but sharper. Your dreams may feel more meaningful. Your body may react faster to what is not aligned. Your mind may begin to crave less noise, less stimulation, less chaos, because something deeper is trying to speak. This matters because a private calling does not only need protected boundaries, it needs a clear inner channel. There is a kind of clarity that does not come from more advice. It does not come from asking 10 people what they think. It does not come from scrolling, searching, consuming, comparing, or forcing an answer before it's time. It comes when the noise inside you begins to settle enough for the original signal to be heard again. Some call it intuition. Some call it discernment. Some call it inner knowing. Some call it the voice of the divine moving beneath the surface of thought. But whatever language you use, you know when it is missing. You know what it feels like when your mind is crowded, but your spirit is trying to speak. You know what it feels like when you are tired, in a way that is not just physical. You know what it feels like when you sense you were made for more, but something inside feels locked, delayed, or covered by static. That is not the end of your gift. That may be the signal asking to be cleared. And later, we will go deeper into what that means, because there is a connection between your spiritual privacy, your mental clarity, and the part of you that used to feel more alive, more intuitive, more creative, more guided, before the noise of life taught you to doubt yourself. But for now, hold this. You are not losing yourself. You are recovering the self that was buried under overexposure. You are not becoming distant. You are becoming discerning. You are not closing your heart. You are closing the doors that kept draining it. And I hear this being placed on my heart for you. I did not hide you because you were weak. I hid you because what I placed in you was too important to be shaped by every voice around you. I did not make you private to punish you. I made you private to prepare you. I did not allow the silence to erase you. I allowed the silence to return you to the sound of what is true. So do not run back to the noise just because the quiet feels unfamiliar. Do not reopen the door just because guilt knocks with a familiar voice. Do not hand out the blueprint just because someone asks what you are building. Let the private work continue. Let the sacred door stay guarded. Let the old access fall away without turning your healing into an announcement. Because the next revelation is this: you were not hidden because nothing is happening. You were hidden because something is happening so deeply that it cannot survive the wrong frequency. And when you understand that, you will finally stop asking why the room got quiet. You will understand that the quiet was not the absence of movement. The quiet was the place where your signal started returning. And when your signal starts returning, everything begins to feel different. Not louder, clearer, not more dramatic, deeper. Not like the world suddenly becomes easy, but like something inside you finally stops fighting against itself. You begin to notice what drains you faster. You begin to sense what is not aligned before it fully touches your life. You begin to hear the quiet difference between pressure and peace, between urgency and guidance, between a door that is opening and a door you are trying to force because fear does not want to wait. This is the real revelation. You were not hidden because nothing was happening. You were hidden because something was happening too deeply to survive the wrong frequency. Your private season was not empty. It was not wasted. It was not a delay with no meaning. It was a protected room where the divine could begin separating your true signal from the static that had been covering it for years. And chosen one, the static was not only outside of you, it was also inside your nervous system. It was in the old fear that made you answer too quickly. It was in the guilt that made you reopen doors you had already closed in your spirit. It was in the pressure to prove, explain, respond, defend, perform, and stay available, even when your soul was asking for rest. It was in the voices you absorbed from people who never saw you clearly. It was in the disappointment you carried from seasons where you thought being chosen would feel more beautiful than it actually felt. Because nobody tells you that being chosen can feel heavy before it feels holy. Nobody tells you that the private room can feel like rejection before it becomes protection. Nobody tells you that your calling can feel like confusion when your inner signal has been buried under too many voices. But this is why the quiet mattered. The quiet was not the absence of movement. The quiet was the place where your original knowing began to breathe again. There was a version of you, before the world trained you to doubt yourself, that could sense things deeply. You may remember it from childhood, a time when imagination felt alive, when ideas came naturally, when you could feel the mood of a room before anyone said a word, when you learned quickly, dreamed vividly, noticed patterns, and carried a strange inner brightness that other people did not always understand. Then life happened. Noise happened. Pressure happened. Disappointment happened. Survival happened. You learned to shrink your knowing so you would not be called too sensitive. You learned to explain away your intuition so you would not seem strange. You learned to ignore your body when it warned you. You learned to keep going even when your spirit was tired. You learned to ask everyone else what they thought before trusting what had already been whispered within you. And little by little, the signal became covered, not destroyed. Covered, that distinction matters, because if it was destroyed, there would be nothing to recover. But if it was covered, then clarity is still possible. Discernment is still possible. Creativity is still possible. That deeper knowing is still possible. The part of you that once felt connected, alive, intuitive, and strangely guided is not gone. It has been waiting beneath the static. That is why this message had to be private. A public version of you cannot heal a private wound. A performative version of you cannot hear a quiet instruction. A constantly available version of you cannot protect a sacred signal. You needed the hidden room because your signal needed protection. You needed the silence because your mind needed space to stop repeating the opinions of people who were never assigned to define you. You needed the separation because your spirit was learning the difference between the voice of fear and the voice of guidance. This is what happened to Esther before she stepped into her moment. She was hidden before she was revealed. She was prepared before she was positioned. She did not walk into purpose without a private process first. The public assignment came later, but the private formation came first. That pattern is not random. The seed is hidden before it becomes a tree. The oil is hidden before it fills the lamp. The letter is sealed before it is delivered. The person is formed in private before they can carry what is public without being destroyed by it. So stop despising the hidden place. Stop treating the quiet as proof that you are behind. Stop measuring your preparation by how visible it looks to other people. Some of the deepest work in your life is happening below the surface. Roots do not clap. Foundations do not announce themselves. Oil does not shout from inside the vessel. But when the appointed moment comes, what was hidden begins to explain itself without you forcing it. And this is why the next instruction is so important. You must protect your signal, not just your schedule, not just your plans, not just your relationships. Your signal, the inner channel where peace speaks before fear starts negotiating. The inner place where guidance arrives before your mind starts asking for 10 opinions. The inner sense that tells you, this is not for me, even when everything looks good on the outside. The inner knowing that whispers, wait, when your anxiety wants to rush and move. When your fear wants to hide, that signal is sacred, and if you keep surrounding it with noise, you will keep mistaking confusion for lack of calling. You do not lack a calling. You need your signal cleared. You do not lack purpose. You need the static lowered. You do not lack wisdom. You need enough inner quiet to hear the wisdom that has been trying to rise. This is where the spiritual and the practical meet, because for some of you, the issue is not only that you need stronger boundaries, it is also that your mind has been living in survival for so long that clarity feels unfamiliar. You can remove the wrong people and still feel foggy. You can make space and still feel mentally crowded. You can want to hear guidance and still feel like something inside you is locked behind a wall of noise. That is why I want to speak carefully about something. There is a reason certain states of focus, creativity, intuition, and flow feel different in the brain. When your mind is scattered, overwhelmed, or trapped in survival, you may feel slow, heavy, reactive, and disconnected from the deeper part of yourself. But when your brain enters a more integrated state, you may feel clearer, more receptive, more creative, more able to notice patterns, more able to act from peace instead of panic. Some people describe this as flow. Some call it heightened intuition. Some call it divine alignment. In neuroscience, one of the brainwave states, often connected with high-level processing, insight, and expanded awareness, is gamma. And that matters for you, chosen one, because you may have felt that something in you used to be sharper. Not in an arrogant way, in a quiet way. As if you once had access to a deeper brightness, a stronger intuition, a quicker imagination, a more alive connection with possibility. Then the modern world, stress, disappointment, emotional noise, and constant stimulation covered it. This is why the idea of gamma is so powerful, because maybe your gift was not gone. Maybe your inner signal was buried. Maybe the life you called confusion was really a system overloaded by static. Maybe the clarity you have been praying for also needs a practical way to help your mind return to the state where it can receive, create, and discern again. This is where a tool called the Genius Song may matter for some of you. I want to be very clear. This is not a magic promise. This is not a replacement for prayer, discipline, healing, wise decisions, or the boundaries we have been talking about. You still have to protect your access. You still have to choose peace over pressure. You still have to stop handing sacred things to careless hands. But for the person who feels like their inner signal has been buried under mental fog, emotional heaviness, and years of survival, the Genius Song was created as a 7-minute audio track designed to support brainwave entrainment and help guide the mind toward a gamma state. You put on headphones. You listen for 7 minutes. You let the sound do what sound can do, not by forcing your mind, not by making you repeat a mantra, not by asking you to become perfect at meditation, but by giving your brain a rhythm to follow. Think of it like a radio. If the radio is stuck between stations, the message may be present, but all you hear is static. The answer may be there, but the signal is not clean. The music may be playing, but the dial is slightly off. The Genius Song is designed to help turn the dial, not to create a gift that was never in you, but to support the clarity of what may already be there. There are people who have used it and described feeling sharper, more creative, more tuned in, more able to act from a place of inner calm. One woman who had spent years searching through spiritual practices said the change was not just mental for her. She described it as synchronicity returning, as if life started speaking in a language she could understand again. Another person described years of fog beginning to lift, not because their life became perfect overnight, but because decisions that once felt heavy started becoming clearer. And maybe you know that feeling. Maybe you do not need more noise. Maybe you do not need another complicated practice. Maybe you need a simple 7-minute ritual that helps your mind remember the state your spirit has been trying to return to. The original price of the Genius Song is $49, but for viewers of this message, it is available for $39. With it, you also receive the additional bonuses that come with the official version, including the Genius Child audio, a classic book connected to the deeper principles of creating a new life, a guided visualization, and an infographic with 5 daily habits to support your future. And there is a money-back guarantee, so if you explore it and feel it is not for you, you are not trapped. But please hear this part carefully. There are fake versions and copycat pages using the name without the real embedded brain entrainment technology. Some are just ordinary audio with a spiritual label placed on top. If you feel led to explore this 7-minute ritual, use only the official link placed below and in the pinned comment. Do not search randomly and trust whatever appears first. The official link is there so you receive the real track, the bonuses, and the guarantee. And if you do not feel led, do not force it. This message is not about pressure. It is about resonance. For some of you, the next step is simply to protect your peace. For some of you, the next step is to become private again. For some of you, the next step is to clear the inner signal so the calling can be heard without all the static. Only your spirit can recognize which part is for you. Now return to the deeper message. The tool is not the transformation. The transformation is what happens when you stop living exposed, scattered, and drained, and begin guarding the room where your clarity is returning. That is why you need the private room protocol. You do not need to move. You do not need to write anything down right now. Just build it inside your mind. Imagine that same sacred room within you. The room where your healing, your next instruction, and your deepest dream are still resting on the table. But this time, you are not standing outside the door hoping someone else will protect it. You are inside the room, and you finally understand that you are the steward of what is sacred. Now place 3 names in your awareness. Not out loud, just inwardly. The first is the name of something you must stop explaining. Maybe it is your silence. Maybe it is your new boundary. Maybe it is a decision you are not ready to announce. Maybe it is a dream that becomes weaker every time you give it to the wrong person. Let that thing become covered. The second is the name of someone who can receive kindness from you, but not full access. Do not hate them. Do not curse them. Do not create a war inside your heart. Simply move them to the outer court of your life. They can receive respect. They can receive peace. They can receive distance, but they do not get the key to the private room. The third is the name of one inner signal you are ready to recover. Maybe it is your creativity. Maybe it is your intuition. Maybe it is your courage. Maybe it is your ability to trust yourself. Maybe it is your peace. Now imagine that signal as a small flame inside the room, not a fire that burns everything down, a steady flame, quiet, golden, alive. And every time a wrong voice tries to enter, the door remains closed. Every time guilt tries to knock, the flame does not panic. Every time fear says, "Explain yourself," the flame stays still. That is your inner command. Guard the flame, not with anger, with devotion. Guard the flame when people ask questions they have not earned the answer to. Guard the flame when your old self wants to send the long message. Guard the flame when you feel tempted to trade peace for approval. Guard the flame when someone mistakes your privacy for pride. Guard the flame when the room gets quiet and your fear tries to call the quiet rejection. Because the quiet is not rejection. The quiet is where the flame grows steady. And this is what you must practice over the next season. Before you share, ask whether the dream has roots yet. Before you answer, ask whether peace is speaking or panic is reacting. Before you return, ask whether the door is opening from wisdom or guilt. Before you explain, ask whether your words are bringing clarity or begging for permission. Before you say yes, ask whether that yes protects the flame or exposes it. This is how the private message becomes a lived message. Not by hearing it once, by moving differently after you hear it. Some of you will need to comment one word as a seal, not for attention, not for performance, but as a small public witness to a private decision. If this message has reached the place in you that knows it is time to guard what is sacred, comment privat. That word is not for the crowd. It is for your own spirit. It is a marker that says, I understand now. I can be loving without being exposed. I can be kind without being available to every demand. I can be chosen and still hidden. I can protect the sacred thing until it is strong enough to stand. And as this closes, let the final truth settle. This message was never about making you afraid of people. It was about making you faithful to what is being formed in you. It was never about disappearing. It was about becoming covered until the right time. It was never about rejecting everyone. It was about learning who belongs in the inner room and who must be loved from a distance. It was never about becoming silent because you have nothing to say. It was about becoming silent until your words carry weight again. Chosen one, you have entered a season where not everything can be shared. Not every move can be announced. Not every dream can be discussed. Not every wound can be reopened for people who only know how to look at pain, not honor healing. Your privacy is not punishment. Your hiddenness is not failure. Your quiet is not weakness. Your boundary is not cruelty. Your discernment is not pride. You are allowed to be seen by the divine before you are understood by people. You are allowed to be prepared in silence before you are revealed in strength. You are allowed to carry a sacred instruction that nobody else gets to vote on. You are allowed to stop leaking your energy into rooms that cannot hold your becoming. And I hear this final word being placed on my heart for you. I did not hide you to erase you. I hid you to form you. I did not cover you because you were forgotten. I covered you because what I placed in you needed protection. I did not allow the room to become quiet because you lost your place. I allowed the room to become quiet so you could hear me again beneath the noise. So do not run from the private place. Do not despise the hidden work. Do not reopen every door just because someone knocks. Do not explain what is still being formed. Let the roots grow. Let the flame steady. Let the signal clear. Let the sacred thing remain sacred until the appointed time. And when the time comes, you will not have to force the door. You will not have to prove the process. You will not have to beg the wrong people to understand what they were never assigned to carry. The fruit will speak. The peace will speak. The clarity will speak. The life you become will speak. Until then, guard the private room. Protect the flame. Honor the signal. And remember this every time guilt tries to pull you back into exposure. You can be loving without being exposed. You can be powerful without being loud. You can be chosen and still be hidden. And hidden does not mean forgotten. Hidden means protected. Hidden means prepared. Hidden means the divine is doing something too sacred to be handled by every hand, watched by every eye, or interrupted by every voice. This was for your eyes only because your spirit was ready to receive it. Now keep it carefully, live it quietly, and let what is sacred grow.